Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed, and today we are in the Philosophical Midwifery book. We are reviewing Chapter 2, Part 3, The Wordless Transmission. The fact that we can't remember our pathologos. We don't know the beliefs that we are carrying that cause our problems because they were never put into words. So this process of discovering what we are carrying that causes our problems is a process of putting what was unspoken into words. The process of continually reflecting on the aspects of our problems that we can see is a process of putting things into words. And this putting things into words, as well as learning a new language that will allow us to put those things into words, is the process of uncovering the mysterious treasure, uncovering the One Piece, you could say. This is what we want, because when we discover this treasure, the unsuspected false belief about self and reality that we are in a dialectic with, that is causing our problems, then we become free. We become free of what limits us, what saps our energy, what distracts us from our goals, what causes us to undermine ourselves, our understanding, our experience. But also we remedy the great injustice. And you could say, well, the reason we have our problems is because mind does not allow this kind of injustice against self. You are much different and better. You're much better than what you think you are. Because what you think you are is not the self that you are here to discover once you have that freedom. So this freedom is in the realm of midwifery, and the use of that freedom to reach the truth, that's the realm of philosophy. And when I say philosophy, of course, I mean the logos. And the best evidence of that, or the best tool for discovering the logos, is the Balboa translation of Plato, which is the recording of the words of Socrates, someone who himself mastered this logos. The logos. Now, the word philosophical midwifery comes from a term invented by Socrates. So that's what we are exploring today, the wordless nature of our problem. Putting it into words is the process of discovering the problem. And then once we get to the core of our problems, then we have to put that into words. That's a process of understanding. Taking the parts, unifying them together, putting a name on it, that's all involved in, those are all aspects of understanding. We need to understand the cause of our problems, the pathologos. And that's what we are reviewing. Putting into words and learning the language is the uncovering, it's the discovering of the cause, and then it's the addressing of that cause relative to what we have been learning about what is truly true and truly just, and saying, hey, that's not. This thing that I've been carrying was just an image, an imitation of truth and justice, and it's in fact not true. And as we've been reading, to the extent you can do that, put into accurate language and words what is true about our problem, to that extent you become free of it. So, neat. We can be rational about our problems. Being rational is following evidence and reason along the line of reasoning, along the flow of reasoning, along the logical steps to a cause. That's being rational, addressing the cause of a problem. And you could say, well, how come we don't do that today? How come prisons never address cause? They just punish people who are victims of causes. How come wars don't address the cause of the apparent problems they're attempting to solve? How come politicians don't address the cause of wealth inequality or the cause of suffering, capitalism itself? Well, because we are irrational as a species. We can be rational about many things, but as we read in chapter 1, the big question is, why are we so immature and irrational when it comes to ourselves? So what is rational? Well, we just talked about that. Reflection through reason and evidence to causes. So, in the one thing that's fun to do in philosophy is ousia. Take the thing you're describing and turn it around and apply it to itself. Just as we are using our mind to understand our mind in philosophy and midwifery. Well, how can we be rational about our irrationality? We need to reflect on what's happening with language and words, follow that evidence and reason back to the cause of our irrationality. So those things, how come our education, justice, legal, economic systems are all irrational and harmful and causing suffering and lots of problems? Why are we so, well, because we're irrational. That would be the cause of why we are not addressing it. But what's the cause of our irrationality? Why are we so irrational within our species and within the institutions that we've set up? Well, we would have to find what's the cause of that to be rational about our irrationality. And that's what we're doing here on this series, being rational about the cause of our irrationality. And we looked at that last time. Let's bring it up on the board. Last time we did a little mind map of the flow of human problems in our society, but which also reflects what we're doing here. Because we are humans, politics is just the soul writ large, to use a quote from the Republic. So this is the problems that we face: oppression, slavery, destruction of self, our planet and our species. Something that is needed to enslave a population, have a small amount of people that get to sit on the pile of money. When's it my turn to sit on the pile of money? Never. And then when I die, my son will sit on the pile of money. Only we may sit on the pile of money. That's our stupid society. Violence is needed. We have to use violence. Some people deserve suffering. They deserve to be poor. And we're even angry about those poor people, says the rich. There's no logos or discussion that will address causes. We have to have an enemy image to dehumanize the people that we are oppressing. That comes from making a demand based on what we think it's true. Hey, so all of these right-wingers and fascists and things who justify inequality say there's a natural order. It's a self-evident order of reality that some people, the white rich men, are on top and everybody else is various degrees of lesserness, and they deserve is the big word. They deserve to be oppressed. And then there's a word that is used. You are an American if you say so. You are a heathen if you say so. You are inappropriate or disrespectful if you disagree with me. And that's just a projection of their individual personal beliefs and preferences. There's no coincidence that the fascists and right-wingers and Republicans and all of those sorts of people who say, hey, the rich white men should have all the stuff. They get to sit on the money pile. It's no coincidence that they are from a family of rich white people. So that's where they get their beliefs and their preferences from the milieu. And what's the cause of that? Ultimately, the pathologos. So what we are doing is finding the problems that we are suffering in the planet, finding the chain of causes back to the original cause. And that's what we're addressing, the pathologos. The pathologos is a fundamental false belief that informs our personal beliefs, that allows us to use, that we then project. All people think this way. So that's a very common thing humans do. when they're trying to shut someone down, they'll say, nobody likes that, or all people don't like that. This projection of what all people think, or universalizing. And then if you disagree with that, well, then that personal preference or belief becomes a demand. You have to agree with me, otherwise we'll shoot you, or you'll go to hell, or we'll put you in jail, or you get a bad grade, or you get fired. All of these things takes a personal preference, makes a demand. And then if you don't obey, then you need an enemy image that dehumanizes you. You are disrespectful, inappropriate, un-American, heathen. Or you can even use psychology language. You're a narcissist, is the big one, is trendy right now. And that shuts down the logos, because if you're not human, why talk? You're a savage, as the whites called the blacks in America in the 60s. Or you are a vermin, as the Nazis called the Jews. Or you are a savage, as the Jews calls the Palestinians. Notice, it was done to the Jews and now they're doing it again. So what does that show? It shows that we perpetuate this cycle of this problem until we address the cause. So, what do you do then? You get angry at the people. Oh, I hate those Palestinians, they're savages, says the Jewish Israeli army members or people. And they deserve, not all of them of course, just those who have bought into this cycle of false beliefs. And we have to do violence towards them, but isn't that evil? Nope, if they deserve it. And they deserve it because they are unhuman, and we have this enemy image because they didn't agree with my demand, which was a projection of my universal, made universal my personal preferences, which is itself a reflection of my pathologos. And then, what does violence allow for? Subjugation, slavery, oppression. Now, what's interesting about what we are reading about the pathologos is this is the goal. If our image of beauty and justice comes from an imitation of a moment when we were young, when we were crushed, when we were put into slavery, when we were told, don't pursue your self-goals, pursue my goals, slavery, don't reflect, introspect, do physical things, do chores, sacrifice the most important thing we're here for, reflection on self, ousia, philosophy, for practical things. Why? Because other people can benefit from you making things for them or doing chores for them. Other people can't benefit from your self-reflection. Unless, of course, you master this art, then this is the only thing that benefits. That's the irony. Same thing with the rich. I don't care about the other human beings or the planet or equality or suffering because I don't benefit. The irony is you actually do benefit the most if you lived in a society that didn't have capitalism, that didn't have polluted air, polluted water, people suffering spiritually as your soul, but also just to be able to walk in a community where everyone was connected. There's no community in capitalism. Everybody, unless you're rich, you go to a country club, I suppose, but everybody else has a job and they relate to each other as professionals, and there's no connection, no fun. It's all work, 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 work. Why? Because if you get people working, you can exploit them. You can shave off the top your profit. You can exploit their work. So, you want to get people working, you don't want people reflecting on themselves. So if that's when our parents or parental surrogates looked the most beautiful and knowing, and our soul seeks true knowing and beauty, that's what motivates us. That's why we're all philosophers. The only problem is the image of this gets in the way of the true nature of truth and beauty. I saw back about a terrible mattress. In the realm of being, then how do we get that? The thing that we are motivated to reach in our destiny or our perfection is the truth of being and beauty and knowingness in the realm of being, the non-physical dimension of reality that's eternal and open to all those who can access it. The problem is this guy gets in the way. There's a pretender on that throne. So what does that mean? So that means this is our fake destiny or fate. So how do we get in this position where we can crush somebody? Because that's what we think it means to be the greatest. So there's a saying. Hang on a second. There's a saying, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, that's a fun saying because there's like a fake ousia or you could say it's actually ousia. There's a self-referential use of words, which is kind of ousia. The words repeat themselves and then flip around. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So, but again, we want to be rational, so what's the cause of that? Well, you could say it a different way. Power affords people the opportunities to play out this with impunity. That's all. That's the cause of that. So power doesn't corrupt if you are engaged in philosophical midwifery with a true and noble spirit. If you are a true, rational, mature human being, power won't corrupt. So long as you are doing midwifery to free yourself from your pathologos and doing philosophy to discover the truth about what is good. Power corrupts absolutely. Power affords the potential to play out this. So what? Well, so because this is your goal for all human beings who aren't in this game. So good for you if you are in this game. You're one of the good eggs, as we say in Australia. So what does that mean? Well, in order to crush someone, you have to set up the conditions. So you have to find a way, get into a position of power to insist that your personal opinions are absolutes. Like if you knock door to door and say, it's my opinion that women should all wear dresses and never long pants. No one's going to care. You'll get laughed at. Or maybe punched in the nose if you're too, insistent. But if you're a boss of a small company, then you can say, all women have to wear dresses at my workplace. You have got a tiny amount of power over somebody else, and you are using that power to play out this drama. Simple. That's why we call, in capitalism, we call bosses or managers petty tyrants, or landlords and that sort of thing. They can insist, my personal beliefs, you have to pretend that they are truths. And if you don't, so it's a demand, you are a bad employee, or you are a disruptive student, or a bad student, or blah, 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 blah. And then you deserve whatever violence I have under my power. For a boss, that could be firing, or, I don't know, office dynamics, ways of abusing people. But if you are a ruler of a country, the same thing happens, but you can play it out with an army. You can actually genocide people, or blow up people, or torture people. You can't do that as a petty tyrant in a workplace. But it's the same dynamic. Same dynamic. So we all do this. Whether we are aware of it or not, that's why it's fate. We are stuck within the chains of our problem. Our problem means our soul, we're not aware of it because it's wordless, so we need to put it into words. Our soul is looking for a situation to get this. So our whole lives, our relationships, our hobbies, our schooling, our job, our workplaces are all trying to create these conditions so we can reach this. That's why we seem so immature and irrational. We're not irrational. There is a rationality behind our irrationality, you could say. By looking at the causes of our irrationality, we can see. By applying rationality to our irrationality, we can see there's a hidden rationality behind our irrationality. This. So what? Well, you might meet someone and you become friends with them, and then you slowly be nice to them until they buy in. Sometimes you can use money. Hey, look at my money. And, the people buying in is an employee. It makes it harder. But you can find, introduce somebody to get interested in you. So then you can start saying, these are my beliefs and I insist on them. You have to do them. If you don't, you're disrespectful, or you're a bad husband, or you're a bad blah, 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 or you're a heathen. And that can justify me being angry at you, and that anger can justify my violence. The type or style of my violence is my pathologos. That's a justification for me to do this kind of thing. The same thing that was done to me. Finally, I've got an excuse. On the political scale, because politics is just the soul writ large, is you could say, well, let's say Netanyahu wants to inflict genocide, and you might want to ask, hey, does his family or culture have a history of genocide? Yes, of course they do. So what do you have to do? Well, it's kind of common knowledge that the inciting event was either orchestrated or allowed to happen. They knew it was going to happen and they let it happen, or they did it themselves. Why? Because you need an inciting event to make the other person wrong. Now, hey, this thing happened, nothing to do with you. We actually orchestrated it or allowed it to happen, but that will justify us saying, hey, this terrible thing that we did happened, but it's your fault. You are a savage or a heathen or a bad person. Now I can justify no logos in discussion and just, now you are a bad person, therefore you deserve anger and punishment, which is an excuse to play out violence, which is an excuse to do this. Same thing. Famously, most wars are started in this. Somebody who wants to do this terrible thing through war has to create a inciting event. Sometimes they're called false flags, but they're more common than not, that you can blame the other side for. So, that's just the soul writ large. Just look at your own relationships. Do you know people in your life who are got an eagle eye out, waiting for you to slip up, make a mistake, because now they can jump on you in the same way they were jumped on? It could be abuse, it could be mocking, it could be ganging up. Many, many ways of crushing the person. All you got to do is find an excuse to do it. What's the excuse? They're wrong. Now, if somebody misses the mark, the Greek word is amartie, then you help them learn, you help them correct themselves through reflection, conversation, discussion, logos. That's the art that we're learning. How do you reflect on problems or mistakes, reflect on the cause of it, and use the archetype or paradigm, the art of logos, the art of midwifery and philosophy, to correct yourself. That's what it means to be a mature, rational, and good person. Benefit person. A person who benefits people. But that's completely at odds to the pathologos, which is anti-logos, which is anti-benefit, which is anti-self, which is anti-consciousness, mind, and reality. It's anti-spiritual. 99% of human beings are in this game, looking for an excuse to play out their image of what it means to be knowing, because they haven't purified that false addiction, sickness, a sick view of what it means to be good and knowing. So they'll set up, by the way, you might realize that these people who are looking to catch people out so they can gossip about them, or they can yell at them, or they can break up with them, or they can gang up on them, often they will create the conditions for that mistake, set the trap. They're doing it themselves. Hey, even if they didn't and somebody did miss the mark, it's never an excuse to be nasty to someone or violent to someone or mean to someone. It's only ever an opportunity to reflect, to find those delicious gold nuggets. Gold nuggets aren't delicious. Delicious breadcrumbs, maybe? Crumbs, clues. Because every mistake or misstep or missing the mark is an opportunity to discover new clues about your pathologos. Your problems are clues and breadcrumbs that you can follow back to the first cause. And that's what we're here for. That's why we're alive, to do this. Now, don't just believe me, do it and see it yourself. And understand why it must necessarily be the case. If all human beings get a pathologos and it's the cause of our problems, and as soon as anybody becomes rational and mature and reflects on themselves, they will discover that this pattern is a universal truth, because it is the actual truth. They will discover that this line leads back to here. It could be a person in 100 years. It could be Socrates 2,500 years ago. It could be an alien species on an alien planet 1,000,000 light years away and 1,000,000 years in the future. They will discover this. As soon as we wake up to philosophy, we awaken philosophy, or wake up to rationality, really. So if that's the case, if we all get one, if it's the cause of our problems, and there's a alarm clock, there's a ticking clock that as soon as we reach 4 o'clock, we will realize that we all have this pathologos. It's the cause of all of our problems. So we will inevitably realize this. Then wouldn't it make sense that we are here to discover that, understand it, and experience in first-hand experience what it means to suffer from an ignorant pathologos, because it was wordless, because we didn't learn the art of words, art of logos, art of language, to experience in first-hand what it's like to live on a planet that is opposed to the logos and ignorant of the logos, keeps it wordless. And also, perhaps, experience firsthand what it's like to wake up to this, wake up to rationality, discover the cause, and experience in real time what it would be like for an individual, and hopefully, fingers crossed, a society that actually does address the cause of our problems. Wouldn't that make rational sense? Isn't that a good hypothesis? A sound, beautiful, maybe necessary explanation that makes sense of the parts that we have pulled out? If so, we can put it in our hypothesis sack and take it as a very nice hypothesis for the meaning of life, the reason we're here. And also it will help us understand why we call this our destiny, why Socrates says this is our destiny. Purify yourself from this. Use that freedom to seek the truth. And if this is true of all human beings, it's very important to set this up as principles. So if you're involved in a relationship, or you're involved in a group, or you're involved in a business, or you're involved in anything, this is going to happen. To be mature would be to set down some principles for when it does happen, you can not fall into this oppression, slavery, destruction of self, but reflect on it to follow this causal chain back to the beginning. Otherwise, you will just end up here. You will end up doing unto others the worst injustice that was done unto you. There has to be these principles to catch when you are silencing the logos, catch when you are making demands or threats, catch when you are trying to say no discussion, or I'm not listening to your words. Catch it, because it's just this step in a understandable pattern to reach this step. If you don't, you will act out the same injustice on others, and the group will devolve into tyranny, as all of our institutions have, all of our political, most of our political systems have. But to the extent that our laws, which are principles writ large, if politics is the soul writ large, then the principles we follow are writ large into laws. To the extent that the laws reflect the logos is the extent to which institutions, systems, societies do not fall into the worst kind of tyranny. So right now there's a genocide happening against the Palestinian people, supported by many very powerful institutions, groups. And what is a mark of those groups? No, they don't follow laws. The American and Israeli and the other Western countries that are supporting a genocide of human beings, a torture and imprisonment, enslavement, torture, and extinction of a race of people, a group of people, they don't follow the laws. The laws don't apply to me. We have the right to disobey the laws because this bad thing we set up happened to us. Or we have a right to not follow any laws because if you disagree with us, you're anti-Semitic. Or we have a right to not follow any laws because we have a right to defend ourselves from the thing that we created ourselves. Problem, reaction, solution is called. You create a problem on purpose so that you can get the reaction, this part here, so you can offer the solution. What we are seeing is, what is the principle behind problem, reaction, solution? And what's a characteristic of fascism and the worst kind of human actions? No laws. No laws. And then you could say, well, the other side of it is the selective use of unjust laws in a sneaky way. So that would be the financial sector. The reason why there are a few really terrible people sitting on a mountain of money while everyone else starves and the planet is dying is because they use bad laws that they've set up because they donated billions of dollars to the politicians. I live in Australia and it's exceptionally corrupt. There are people who are destroying our planet and stealing all our resources and charging us ridiculous monies to live, to pay rent, to have food, all of our basic necessities. We are being price gouged ridiculously while these very, very, very rich companies are stealing all the resources of our land. And they say, oh, we can because we made the laws. We bought the politicians. And most of the politicians in Australia also work for these big oil companies or big mining companies. Or they get a job as soon as they leave. Or they go, it's a back and forth. They call it a revolving door. So extreme corruption in Australia. But most places are like that. Why? Because we haven't woken up to and valued the logos, the actual principles. So we are cosplaying, just like the pathologos is cosplaying what it means to be knowing, crushing the spirit of someone in the same way you were crushed because that's your imitation of knowing. So too, do our legal systems imitate or cosplay the true legal systems, which should reflect the logos, the principles of the logos. There's no logos. So what do they make the laws based on? They're pathologos. That's what we say often in this channel. There's no neutral ground. You're either in this game of discovering the logos and purifying your pathologos, or you are in the pathologos. You can't not exist. You can't not be in a dialectic with something through time. So until we wake up and realize we have to know the logos and master it, and the people who have mastered the logos the best, Socrates-like people, need to be made to be in charge. They won't want to be in charge, but what we'll say to them is, that's part of the qualification. Of course you don't want to be in charge. It's a lot of work when you could be doing this. But the argument we will make to these people is, you are the best people for the job. Would you rather be ruled by someone who is governed by their pathologos? Or would you rather be ruled and live in a society where somebody who follows the logos is in charge? That's why you need to be in charge, fellow who has mastered the logos. Because you're the best qualified. And if you don't, you will be enslaved by someone worse than you. That's injustice. So for justice's sake, and that person, because they're a master of the logos, They have purified their false ideas of justice and discovered the truth of justice. So when we appeal to justice by making this argument to those people, they will probably listen because they're the best people and they understand what we're talking about. So in the meantime, we have laws that are cosplaying, imitating, bullshitting the actual laws, the principle of laws, which is the logos. And without knowing the logos, our laws will project the pathologos. Not all of the time. Sometimes we get lucky. There has to be some logos for it not to completely fall apart. But unless we realize that this is happening, then those people, the rich, powerful, most pathologos-ridden people, are just doing what they can to chip away at the logos to create laws that allow them the conditions to play out their pathologos. Why? Because that's what motivates all human beings. All human beings are seeking the condition to play out their pathologos, whether we like it or not, because that's the nature of the pathologos. Isn't that terrible? Yes, but it also is wonderful because it gives us the conditions to discover the pathologos. It gives us the stakes to master the art of the logos. Otherwise, we just scoot by without doing what we're here to do, without reaching our destiny and doing our purpose. So, to the extent the laws reflect the logos, and within our soul and within our relationship, so long as the principles, we don't call them laws in relationships, but the principles that we follow in relationships, so long as they reflect the logos, to that extent we are acting according to our destiny in alignment with truth in the logos and going through the process of purifying what's false and discovering what's true. So, set up these principles. Make sure that you are in groups or in relationships with people who like to reflect, people who have integrity, people who are not going to say, well, no, I'm the one in charge, so my way or the highway, or I took you into this world, I can take you out, my roof, my rules. Those kind of bullshit reasons to abandon the logos, abandon principles. Don't talk with those people. Don't get involved with those people. Or use that as an opportunity to share what you see about this, to make the case that, hey, what you are doing is you're in a cycle of violence, seeking your pathologos tyranny, insisting on your personal preferences and beliefs as though they're universals, making them as threats, dehumanizing anybody who disagrees as a way of justifying shutting down the logos so that you can justify to yourself, self-righteously act out your violence and punishment, which is all just conditions for you to play out your pathologos. You are a slave to that. Why? Because you don't know you're doing it, or you are only vaguely aware you're doing it. I'm sure people are aware of some level of this, but also you're a slave because you didn't choose this. You were born into this family. It's wordless, so it's a blind spot, but also you got it from someone else. You are a slave, you're a dog. Dog as an insult, because dogs are the best and amazing and lovely, lovely creatures. They are outstanding. But as an insult, it's used to mean you're loyal to something you shouldn't be loyal to, because dogs don't decide who they're loyal to. Whoever their master is, they're loyal to it. So you can have police dogs, which are terrible, wonderful creatures used in the most terrible ways. Attack dogs, Nazi dogs, all sorts of dogs. So you are being a dog, unless you are realizing this, acknowledging this, and practicing the virtue, the courage that you need to be honest about it and set up the principles to address it when it comes up, and set up the principles to actually reach truth. And evolve those principles, usia those principles, improve them. It's a relationship. So that's what we're doing as individuals and groups and relationships. So you could say in every relationship there should be 3 people, you, your beloved, and also the logos. It has to be all 3. You can characterize this with a metaphor. You could say Zeus, if you want Zeus to represent the logos and the principles that you follow in your relationships. But there has to be 3. Otherwise, you are inevitably in a relationship as with a triad with your pathologos. Dark Zeus, shadow Zeus. Whatever image you like, you can make up yourself. Because all relationships will just be a slavish, unconscious, unsuspected, because there were no words, because you haven't learnt the language yet. If you don't know what a carburetor is, or a gasket is, or a flange switch is, then you don't know the language of a car engine. So you look it up, you open it up, and you are a complete slave to whatever happens. You don't know what's going on. So unless you learn this language, the language of the logos and the pathologos, and you are using it, so that's definition and demonstration, which is dialectic, then you are a slave to the pathologos. And your whole life will just be setting up conditions in every possible way for you to play it out. Now, fantasies, same thing. Sexuality, same thing. Relationships, same thing. Workplace, same thing. Goals and hobbies, same thing. So you could say, hey, random thoughts and distractions, same thing. So you could say the mind, in every possible way, thoughts, fantasies, daydreams, distractions, real life relationships, well, not real life, everyday life relationships and things, dreams, every single situation, every possible way, mind is communicating this to you to help you or enslave you. There's no getting out of this unless you learn the language to listen, and you have the integrity to apply what you learn, having listened, having learnt the language, into your real life. So you could say, well, we are imprisoned and enslaved into this problem. Yes, but also you're missing the point. If this is the case, if our lives are creating the conditions to inevitably play out our false image of knowingness, then we are also being given the conditions to learn the art of the logos, the mind, and every aspect of our problem is a clue about our problem, so long as we trace it back rationally with self-reflection, ousia, back to the original cause. If we do that, we can learn and we can benefit. We can not only become free, but having gone through this journey, we've learned the art. We've learned a skill and an art that we can use to benefit ourselves always, benefit others always, and even beyond this lifetime. So we are learning an art, the one true art that can extend beyond this lifetime, which again makes it a more beautiful and necessary hypothesis for the meaning of life. If you know you're going to die, because that's a principle of the physical world, then what are you here for? What is it you can take with you? It has to be a kind of learning, because it's the soul that is the only thing that has the possibility of lasting beyond a physical life. It's not your physical stuff, your money and your Bugattis. It's not your honor or positions. You can't be president of the afterlife because you are president of your company here. It has to be a learning. It's the only thing that can rationally make sense. And it has to be a learning that must be able to apply universally. So it has to be a learning about true principles that are eternal, that will apply anywhere you happen to go, if the soul is immortal. It has to be, therefore, a learning about the logos. Now, we could say, well, what kind of learning? Cursory learning? No, we have our problems that you will not be able to completely solve until you learn the art of the logos. So it's not just a learning of the logos, it's a mastery of the logos. And it's not just a mastery in the sense of learning it very, very well, but using it, because mastery of an art requires its use to benefit. If it couldn't be used, it would be impotent. It wouldn't be a complete mastery. And if the learning didn't benefit, it would be unjust, or cruel, or mean, or stupid, or pointless. So, a learning of the mastery of the art of the logos is the only thing, seemingly, that rationally, necessarily, and beautifully makes sense as our purpose here as human beings. So we put that in our hypothesis sack, carry it with us, polish it up as we go, reflect on it, wonder about it, turn it into a question as well. Is it that mastery of the art of the logos, including its use to benefit, is the only thing that could possibly be the meaningful life and therefore our destiny? I wonder. Carry it with us in everything that we learn, both about the logos and pathologos, and everything we experience when we apply it, we can take and reflect on with our hypothesis and our question in our hypothesis and question sack. Make it, which is being on a quest. Carrying a question in this way is to be on a quest. And the more you reflect on it, the more you apply it, the more you polish up your question and polish up your hypothesis, and you make it a nice, shiny gem that you can take with you. Which is fantastic. All right.
Wow.
So that's where we are. Now let's jump back into the text and finish our review of the wordless nature of our false conclusion about ourselves that is the cause of us being in that cycle of violence, cycle of slavery, cycle of fate. Doing whatever we can, unconsciously or somewhat consciously, to create the conditions for us playing out this inevitable injustice that was done unto us. So we need to bring it to light, which means what? Putting words on it, which means what? Learning a new language. What do we take as our hypothesis for the meaning of life? Learning the art of doing that, logos, language, and using it to benefit. Okay? So the answers, and so last time we saw, hey, this pathologos, the false language, we carry with us, we apply all the time, but that includes we are applying our pathologos, our ignorance, our problem, to questions and hypotheses. How do you understand your problem? And what's the answer to your problem? Both will reflect your problem. So these aren't really answers because they don't work. So again, people stuck in their problem. I don't have to reflect according to the principles of the logos. I already know everything. I know what my problem is. You don't. Your pathologos is reflected in how you understand your problem. I know the answer of my problem. You don't. If it was an answer, it would work as an answer. Now you can, provided you are following these principles that lead to self-reflection according to the logos and and midwifery. Doing it, living it, and mastering this art of logos, which is our hypothesis for what we're here for. All right, they should work now. They worked at home in the past, whenever I understood my problem in this bad way and solved it in a bad way, but they don't work now. That brings confusion, that brings ambiguities, and that makes us come to this false conclusion that therefore reality is the problem. There's the devil exists. Humans are irrational. The Palestinians are irrational and needs to be exterminated. The poor people are stupid. The black people are savages, says the white people in America in the 60s. And many other places, of course. So we come to the false conclusion that there is something unknowable and irrational about our existence. What are we doing today? Adding the rationality to our irrationality, discovering the hidden rationality behind rationality, which is nothing other than learning this language that will allow us to reflect on causes. Consider, because the pathologos is born from unspoken conclusions, it cannot be an object of recollection since it was never collected in the first place in words. So we collect things by putting words on it. For until words are found to express something, it remains unavailable to recollection. It cannot become an object of reflection, nor can it be grasped by the understanding. So words and remembering or recollection are linked together. Let's put it on the board. Words are tied to memory or remembering. And words are also tied to understanding. And that's all of this is tied to our hypothesis that the meaning of life or our destiny or our purpose or destiny is tied to mastering the capital T, because it might be the one and only art. It's a little clue, a little puzzle. The art of logos, which is tied fundamentally to words, because words is one key aspect of logos. Isn't this neat to see that our problem is understandable, and even the thoughts that our universe is not understandable is itself understandable? We have just understood what is behind any thoughts we might have when we're feeling down, or any thoughts that others might express when they're justifying their atrocities. Hey, there are no laws or standards. You can't know the meaning of life. You can't know the cause of problems. Let us do capitalism. Let us do genocide. Even those thoughts, when expressed by yourself when you're sad, or people justifying their injustice, even that is rational. You can even understand that. You can even understand what is the cause, what are the conditions, and what precedes this conclusion that there is something unknowable and irrational about our existence. Why do people say that? They have a pathologos. That causes them to project and misinterpret the nature of the problem they're facing, number one, and the conclusion that they are using, or the answer they are using to solve the problem. Both are wrong, both are from the pathologos, and that leads to this conclusion that you can't know or understand reality. So we are understanding what might be the counterattack that we get in this game when we start to understand the nature of self and reality and our problems. You might have a counterattack. Hey, this is crazy. How I can't do this. I'm just a man, or I'm just a girl. I can't do this. If it could be done, then someone else would have done it before. They have. His name was Socrates. People who didn't listen killed him. But ignoring that, you can't. Then there's something fundamentally unknowable or ununderstandable about reality. You can recognize that as, number one, false. Number two, a counterattack, which is a new word, a new language. We're learning the language. But also you can understand even the cause of that. That's just something that everyone says when they haven't addressed their pathologos sufficiently to become free of it. Because if they haven't, they will use their pathologos, they will be manipulated by their pathologos to misunderstand the problem, the question, and misunderstand the answer. But they will be certain, surely, because this worked in the past, whenever I blamed the immigrants for my problems, I got a high five from my dad, and everyone was happy at home. But when I do it now, it doesn't seem to work. Reality is crazy, or the devil exists, that kind of stuff. We can even understand our counterattacks, which is great, because our hypothesis is reality is both knowable and understandable. That's the first line. It is entirely possible to verify for yourself. Let's read it again. We keep coming back to this opening line from this paragraph. It is entirely possible to verify for oneself that we are part of a caring and intelligible universe. Intelligible means knowable. You can directly apprehend it in ousia, and understandable. The process of reaching that apprehension of truth and reality is rational, understandable, meaning there are steps that we are learning, which means it can be an art, which means it can be answered, which means there can be a meaning of life. A destiny for all of us. And the thing itself you experience as a oneness in the intelligible experience. Some people call it enlightenment experience, but that's, I don't know, there's a lot of stuff attached to the word enlightenment, so I don't like to use it that much. But even that experience of nous, understanding reality, is itself rational. So the process of and the thing itself are both rational. It's all rational. And that's something you have to verify for yourself, because the verification is a kind of proof, not belief, not opinion. It's a proof, since it is a way of understanding that is based upon a realization. There's our 1 and 2, understanding and experience, understanding and realization, that our mind constantly communicates with us to cause our problems, to keep us stuck in this pattern, slaves to the fate of playing out your pathologos. No, actually, the word says, constantly communicates to us for our benefit. So in order to escape that pattern, we must be necessarily forced to, or compelled to, not forced, compelled to master this, learn and master this art of the logos, which we are saying is our destiny maybe. And that, if it's an art, it should benefit. So all of our problems, fantasies, random thoughts, distractions, choice of goals, problems we face, are all dreams that we have, are all messages about that problem that are all understandable and knowable, that you can understand and verify for yourself, freeing yourself from your problem, and in the activity of doing that, you've mastered the art of the logos, which is what we're here for. Hooray. All that is tied to this word benefit here. Benefit. The communications from the mind are as profound as they are utterly appropriate to our circumstances. Very, very precisely directed, for the scope of the mind is pervasive, but its precision is always directed to what is personally significant to you, my friend. We will demonstrate that our choice of goals, the problems we face, the daydreams or fantasies we have, and the dreams that visit us in our sleep, each and every one, each and every one. Wow, you are really important if each and every one of them is helping you in this most profound way, and most precise way, and most pervasive way, and in most personally significant way, lots of P's. Each and every one of them are like doorways into the richest insights, source of insights into our life. That's what I've been talking about with principles. Just because it's true, it doesn't stop there. You have to use it. You have to set up the principles in your relationships to have that third person, the art of the logos, the principles of the logos. In your groups, you have to be establishing these principles of the logos and refining them and using them. Understanding that this isn't true isn't enough. Because unless you are doing it, you are still remaining a slave to your injustice. You will still have vice. You will still be hurting your soul. And who knows what your life is going to be like after you die. And who knows what your reincarnation might be like. Or even if you're going to be able to, if you haven't done your work here and mastered the art that you're here to learn. So you have to demonstrate it. You have to prove it. You have to see it for yourself. It's not just faith. You can't just cross your fingers. What do they call it? Pascal's wager. Well, I might as well believe in God because who cares? No, you care. This matters. Reality cares. Simply believing something doesn't do anything. Belief has nothing to do with truth. It has nothing to do with benefit. In fact, belief is very closely tied to harm, because you can trick people to believe the harmful is good. That's how you manipulate. That's marketing. That's propaganda. We want understanding and experience. That's the way out. So what? So each of them are like doorways, but you have to open the door. You have to do it. I have been involved in many groups who have, well, not many, but a few groups who've been interested in midwifery, interested in the logos and pathologos. But it's worth nothing unless they do it. They are just as vicious as anyone else unless they actually establish these principles and do it. That takes a lot more work. It's a rare few who are interested in understanding self and reality and problems. It's our even rarer few who are interested in understanding it properly and discover the logos and pathologos. It's an even rarer few who actually go ahead and do some midwifery, reflect on their dreams and problems using the principles of midwifery, who actually read the Balboa translation of Plato. But it's an even smaller group who recognize the need for principles to be used at all times, because you got to be doing it. And that's how you open the doorways. Not just definition, which again is rare, but demonstration, which are themselves, as we say, the first two categories of the dialectic. Definition and demonstration. Doing it, defining and demonstrating at all times would be division, and the conclusion would be our hypothesis today, reaching our destiny. Just 4 parts to the structure of the dialectic. So simple. So neat. So that's how we open the door. But again, make it a question. If this is true about reality, and everything we get is a doorway into the richest source of insights into our life, how the heck do we open that goddamn door? I want insights. I want enlightenment. I want to know myself. I want to be free of my false idea of myself. I don't even know what my false idea of myself is because it was wordless. I want to put words on it and understand it and become free. I want to reach my highest goals. I want to reach the meaning of life. I want to know where I'm going when I die. I want to make sure that I direct myself to go to the best place. I want to learn the only thing that we can take with us that we can learn while we're here, the outer logos. How do I open that door? Make it a question. Put it in your inventory, polish it up, reflect on it lots, talk to your friends about it, invite your friend for coffee. Oh, this is a coffee tonight. Just a fun game. I have a sip of coffee when I say it. Invite your friend for coffee and say, hey, I've got this question. If it's true and entirely possible to verify for myself that reality is knowable and understandable, or to be fancy, intelligible, and also is constantly communicating for my benefit by giving me these doorways into the richest insights into my life, my question, my friend, who I bought a coffee for, how do I open those goddamn doors? How do I open those doors? There are doors everywhere. How do I open them? Share your question with your friend.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
To hold a question is to be on a quest. What we discover through these insights is that the mind itself provides ample evidence of its own goodness and intelligibility. So, there's our question and there's our answer. That question that we are polishing, reflecting on, by the way, that's just a meditation. The conditions for meditation. That's a mantra, isn't it? A question, or it's also a koan, mixing two together. A mantra or koan, or a question and puzzle that you are reflecting on, that you can focus on and repeat at all times if you can, for a sustained amount of time. But what we are doing is having a question about mind and reality, so therefore it's able to elicit an experience of mind and reality. You're not meditating on jelly beans. You can't know jelly beans directly. You can't merge with jelly beans, but you can merge with mind, because you are mind, well, you have mind. So, formally, the conditions for meditation. But this question is about reality, and the mind itself provides ample evidence for its own goodness and intelligibility. So, there's our question that we have with our friend, and that's how we get the answer. Hold on to that question. Talk about that question over coffee with your friend. And the mind will provide the evidence, will provide the answers. By the way, even those answers would be like doorways. Because the mind might be providing the answers at all times, but how can you listen if you don't know its language? So back to that first question. How do we open those doorways? Doorways to both questions and answers. Well, our hypothesis from today is learning this new language, which allows us to put into words what was unspoken, so to surface our problems, but also this learning a new language definition and using it with principles, or in our world, demonstration, definition and demonstration, not only will help us surface and free ourselves from our problem, pathologos, but might also be the very thing needed to open the door to the logos. The same art or principles to freeing ourselves from what's false is used to open the doorways to truth. Isn't that interesting? Which would add more credence to our hypothesis that we're here to master the art of the logos. This is why we carry it. We've learned these new things by reading and reflecting in this way that can build up our question, put more life, energy, juriki, ki, psychic energy, kundalini into our question, which we're meditating on. Oh, so now we have mantra, it's a repeated question. We have koan, it's a question that we are puzzling about that we can hold on to. But now we are having sustained focus in a way where we can pour more and more energy by linking new questions and insights to it. Now we have a energy or ki aspect to our meditation. It's almost as though philosophy ticks all boxes of spiritual meditation and yoga. If that's the case, then that itself will add more energy and power to our hypothesis. Because if there is a destiny mastering the art of the logos, oh, no, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, 2 thumbs up. Yay. If this is our hypothesis, our destiny or meaning of life is to master the art of the logos, it better include spirituality. Otherwise, it wouldn't be much of a meaning of life if it rejected all of the spiritual enlightenment experiences and states and insights you get in that world. In those realms, in those institutions. Hey, but it wouldn't be much of a meaning of life if it didn't incorporate all of them. So maybe it does. Maybe it's the new paradigm of not just understanding in psychology and philosophy, but spirituality. The new paradigm. Interesting. So what is it? Mastering the art of the logos. What's that? Just learning this new language, defining and demonstrating it. Understanding and realization to verify for ourselves that we are a part of a caring and intelligible universe. Ooh, what a wonderful thing. And one of those questions that we have got from reading that puts us on this quest is, how do we open these doors if our mind constantly communicates to us in this pervasive, precise, personally significant, and profound way? The 4 Ps. How do we open this 4P door? Sounds like an insight. How do I open that gosh darn door? How do I open that 4P door? That 4P door. Good question. We'll carry that and wonder if it's tied to this art of the logos. So, let's check in with our chatty chat here. This might be a dumb question, but is philosophy also about stuff like motivation? Yes. Yes. Good question. Last time we looked at, to be in this game, you can represent this game of reaching our destiny, mastering the art of the logos, purifying what's false and perfecting ourselves in what's true. You could say, hey, this is the anagogic movement. Anagogic means upward moving. Now, Socrates and Plato talk about, hey, you can represent this principle of how we move up to reach our destiny with characters. because there are principles. Those are those principles that should be the laws and the principles that we should use in every relationship that we're in. If we want to be just, if we want to not be bad, slave to our pathologos, and be good, following our destiny, those principles you can represent with characters to help remember them. Oh, memory and understanding, we said, are key. We have to remember, and we also have to understand. So how do you remember things, and how do you help understand something? Mnemonic devices. Make little stories or myths or analogies of those principles. Now, nowadays we would use Batman and Spider-Man and Superman, or the Marvel, or maybe there's an anime you love. We would talk about how Naruto relates to Sasuke and how they both relate to Master Jiraiya, as metaphors to talk about these principles, to remember them. In Plato's Republic, he talks about how a king relates to his soldiers, relates to his merchants, and how they relate to other villages in the Republic, because he uses a city as a metaphor to talk about these principles of the soul. But it helps us to remember them and to understand them by using these analogies. We can call that mythology. The mythology used to remember the principles of the anagogic triad, the principles that lead us towards our destiny, are Apollo, I think he has a bow and arrow. The god Apollo. Okay, so if he was holding a bow and arrow, the stick would be there, and then the bow would be there, and then there'd be an arrow. Okay, let's do it this way. He's holding the stick, and then the other hand is holding the arrow. There we go. There's our Apollo. That represents our reading in order to get the clues, in order to learn the language, in order to get the definition. Say definition if you want. Definitions, the clues. You have to be reading. That's why we read the Orange Book and we read the Balboa translation of Socrates. That's where we get the logos from. But also, you need motivation. You need a reason to read it. You need a reason to choose to do this and not watch another episode of Naruto for the next half hour. You need a reason to talk when you're meeting up for coffee. The Pathologos really wants us to gossip, to create the conditions to attack the people that in the same way that we were attacked, because we're cosplaying it means to be knowing. Oh, look how wise I am, just like my mother when she used to shit on the kids and gossip. Now I'm the one having coffee and crapping on people and gossiping. That's very appealing. That's the appeal of the Pathologos. We need some motivation, inspiration, reason, stakes to actually apply our definitions in demonstration. That's Aphrodite. That's why half of the time on this channel we're reading, the other half we're reviewing. We're seeing how the parts come together into whole. See how we can come up with new questions and answers. Seeing if we can see how it all fits together. And in a personally meaningful way. How can I help my relationship? How can I help my workplace environment? How can I help my meditation? How can I find my meaning of life? That's Aphrodite. To make it personally meaningful and inspirational by seeing the parts come together into meaningful wholes. By the way, this principle of Aphrodite speaks to what we just read. We can verify for ourselves. Mind gives us what we need to verify for ourselves that we live in a caring and intelligible reality. In In other words, the pieces do come together into wholes. That principle that we live in an intelligible reality is the principle Aphrodite. It is knowable and accessible to us through understanding and nous, dianoia and nous, understanding and direct experience. That's the principle of Aphrodite. So she is over here. Aphrodite is really beautiful because it's beautiful how these parts come together into the wholes. She's so beautiful. Look how beautiful she is. So beautiful. Oh. Aphrodite. Yes, it's a good question. Now, if these are the principles that we have, that we are using to read and then connect together, so if you have somebody who is this kind of person, who is has the character that they're willing to reflect on themselves in this way, they're interested in learning in this way, cherish them. Tell them, I think you're great, because there are very few people who are interested in learning a new language, a language of self and mind and reality, and that's definitions, and very few people who are willing to meet for a coffee to talk about how those clues, these are the clues, these are our Sherlock Holmes clues, demonstrate. To demonstrate, to meet for coffee and talk about these clues and put them together into wholes. And you need both. So cherish them and tell them that. Just like Sherlock Holmes, he has to go out and get the clues, but he has to go back to Baker Street and talk to Watson. And Watson's not as smart as Sherlock, but that's okay. Talk about it to put the clues together. We are not just wizards on the greatest quest, like Luke Skywalker or Frodo or Harry Potter.
I'm looking for someone to share in.
You're a wizard, Harry.
Sneaky little witches.
We're also Sherlock Holmes people. It's the archetype. And if you have both together, then you can reach Hermes. Hermes is the guy with the winged helmet. He was a very fast runner. Uh-huh. Very fast runner. Has wings on his helmet. Oh, I'm not very good at drawing wings, am I? Oh, the helmet's not very nice either. Okay. There we go. Right. So he has that winged helmet that races us up to get to Zeus. That's the dialectic. So the hypothesis we've been carrying today is the purpose or destiny for all of us. Destiny means it's for everyone, but our purpose or meaning of life for everyone or destiny is to master the art of the logos. And what's the mastery of the art of the logos? That's the dialectic. So another way you could say is, it's entirely possible to verify through understanding and experience, understanding and enlightenment experiences, that we live in an understandable and knowable universe. So we need to do that. But how do we do that? Learn the logos, but not just Apollo, not just learn the language Apollo by reading, getting all our lovely new definitions, We know what a dianoia is. We know what dialectic is. We know what mythology is. We also have to Aphrodite apply it, which is, by the way, dialectic. Definition and demonstration are the two categories of the first two categories of dialectic. And then if you do that, you will eventually come to a mastery of the logos that you can use, demonstrate to benefit. That's the dialectic. So another way of understanding our hypothesis, notice we're polishing up. We're adding things to our question. Could the meaning of life be learning the logos? We polish it up. Oh, not just learning, but mastering it. We saw more. Oh no, not just mastering it, but demonstrating it, using it. Not just using it, but using it to benefit. So now our question has become evolved. We've leveled up even our question to, could the meaning of life be mastering the art of the logos? Because art's tied to benefit and usage. And now, by sharing our question with our friend, thank you, Zui, our new friend in chat, we can take our questions from our friends, use that to build up our question. Like in a party, if you are a warrior, you can benefit by having a healer. Even though they might not be as strong, they can share with you what they have, their questions, and you can build up your question. Or having a magic user. When I say strong in a different way. A magic user or a healer has a different focus, but by sharing your what you do see or what you are wondering about, you can help each other. And in that sort of a way, we've upgraded our question to, could the meaning of life or our destiny be not just master the other logos, but master the art of the dialectic, which involves both Apollo and Aphrodite, definitions and demonstrations, reading this text and learning this language and applying it to solve puzzles. Both Sherlock Holmes and Watson both come together to reach Hermes, give us this art. So our question has leveled up.
Wow. I want to eat a monkey.
So that's neat. Thanks for the question. Oh, and of course, if that's the case, then there's going to be blocks to it. If our pathologos functions to block us from the logos, everything we've been talking about with principles, everything we've been talking about with, hey, principles, this is the significance of looking for patterns. We've got a 3 here, but earlier we were talking about there being a threesome of relationships. In relationships, you are either in a relationship with the logos principles, with you and your friend, or beloved. This is a good relationship. Or if you don't, you are, or by default, you will be in a relationship with you, your friend or beloved, and the pathologos principles. Drama. So the drama that leads you to create to set those traps, to create the condition for justifying your punishment or violence towards that person because they didn't obey the rules that you happen to believe, not understand, but disbelieve, allowing you to finally attack them and crush them or yell at them the same way that happened to you. So these are triads. So we could say, so the thing about which means we can add them to our skill tree. So we add them to our skill tree here, which means we have our skill tree. We've leveled up. We've got a skill tree of 3s, so we can add those 2 into our skill tree. Got some more 3s there, so 2 more 3s. But then, we've got a 3 over here. Ooh. Having skill trees mean you can pick out a branch from one and then rub it against a branch from the other of the same skill tree and see if there are new sparks, new questions or insights. Can you do it here? What can you see about what we just said about relationships and what we said about this? Could this be the ideal relationship? I don't know. See what questions or insights jump out at you. That's part of the game. So, making these triads and putting them into our skill tree is reading, is Apollo. Rubbing the sticks together and seeing what comes up, that's Aphrodite. Having those insights inspire you. Show you that you can do it. Show that you live in a reality that is doable. The parts do fit together. That's motivating. That's beautiful to see those things coming together. That's Aphrodite. So these skill trees or triads are a fantastic illustration for this principle. Reading, defining a new language, demonstrating it, Aphrodite. And that together leads us to our hyparxis, our highest ideal, our fullest flowering. The fullest flowering of the art of the Logos is the art of dialectic. Hooray! Oh, here we go. Dialectic. To unravel the moment of our decision and to discover the enduring significance upon us is the task of the dialectic. So there's the word dialectic we read. That's the end of section 2. Section 3. Dialectic. Hermes. Not the one from Futurama, the one that races us to Olympia, where the gods live. All right, so all of this today has been an Aphrodite on just one sentence. So sometimes that happens. Sometimes one sentence is so profound and significant and it's worth spending extra time on. What's the sentence? Well, let's read this whole paragraph because this is what our whole episode today has been on. It should be borne in mind that the fundamental reason a problem is because the subject, without knowing it, is constantly trying to understand the present in terms of this misunderstood past. Further, since the conclusions contain elements that are contradictory with one's primary belief system, they then remain irreconcilable. Hey, I think it's nice to help people. Why do I feel myself compelled to crush people in certain ways? That goes against my belief system. They then remain incomprehensible to the subject and cause much distress and grief. Yes, now, in one sense, that distress and grief is distressing and griefy, yeah. But in another sense, it's beneficial because it's giving us the motivation, Zooey from chat, to actually get off the couch and get into this. Although you can do this on the couch too, especially with a coffee and a friend. It gives us the motivation. It doesn't allow us to be content with this false belief that's contradictory with our primary belief system. contradictory with our goals and ourselves. Now, I don't like the word belief in there, but let's keep going. So, cause much distress and grief. The way we have come to understand ourselves, the images, attitudes we present to others are based upon these primary beliefs about ourselves, much as different colored threads of tapestry present images to viewers. So it sounds like he's saying that even within the pathologos belief system that we want to present ourselves to the world through, there are contradictory elements. Interesting. So we want to present ourselves a certain way, like a tapestry of threads. We present images to viewers. The conclusions one draws about one's current problem are then confused, as parts are irreconcilable. Curiously, they seem to be answers, but they don't function as answers because they simply don't work and they can't work. We repeatedly give ourselves the same answers to our problem. I know my problem, says people. Yet the problem persists. In the past, these answers worked. They were the ones we offered ourselves, and they obscure the event. They don't actually go to the root cause. Oh, I have this problem because reality is like this, because the blacks are like this, because the Palestinians are like this, because women are like this, because blah, 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 blah. That's not the problem. It obscures the event where you got the actual problem, the false belief about self and reality. These answers should work now. They worked at home in the past, but they fail now. The ensuing confusion and the ambiguities we face bring us to the thought that there is something unknowable and irrational about our existence. That's the conclusion that prevents the logos. That's what justifies people from not realizing there is a principle of reality, or not realizing that there is a divine, or atheists. That, of course, I don't like to use the word atheist because that's usually used in contrast with faith, which is religion. We're not interested in religion. That's even worse. Because it's an allegiance or a loyalty, a dogged loyalty to beliefs. We're not interested in beliefs. We need understanding, because understanding is what it means to be rational. Understanding actually gets to the root of the problem. You don't blame your problems on a mysterious devil in the sky. That's crazy, and that justifies violence and genocide, of course. But also, unknowable. That doesn't mean that just because people are wrong about reality doesn't mean there isn't reality. Just because people are wrong about the divine doesn't mean there's not a realm of being that we can know. So, but these is the reasons why we would say that. You can't know reality, or you can't understand reality. You can't understand problems. You can't know problems. These are conclusions that we can see come from the fact that we are ourselves using answers that don't work because we have a pathologos. The irony being, as soon as we discover our pathologos by learning the art of the dialectic, what we're here for, and we become free of it, not only are we free of this catchphrase, reality is unknowable and irrational, but we have been given the proof that it is rational and knowable, because to free ourselves from that, the cause of that catchphrase, we had to learn the thing that shows us we can know our problems. In other words, it is entirely possible to verify for yourself that you are part of a caring and knowable universe. Understandable and knowable universe. The realization is a kind of proof, because it's based on a way of understanding. That's what we just saw. To counteract the false belief or catchphrase that reality is not intelligible, not knowable and understandable, you have to go to the root cause of why you're saying that, a pathologos. To get to that root cause, you have to go through this learning of a new language, midwifery. Midwifery is a demonstration or a verification or a kind of proof based on a way of understanding and art. Therefore, the mind itself provides evidence of its own goodness and intelligibility. In order to understand why you're saying reality isn't intelligible, You have to go to the cause of it. To get to the cause of it is midwifery, the art of the dialectic. That itself not only removes the cause for saying it, it provides evidence, proof, verification from mind itself that the opposite is true. You just used it. You just used it to free yourself. Therefore, it is knowable and understandable. And the art you just used as a principle is eternal and knowable and understandable, which gives it a lot of good reasons why it could be, therefore, the meaning of life, our purpose, our destiny. All of this shown for ourselves, by ourselves, from mind. Or together, not by ourselves. Together on this channel. Isn't that neat? Yes.
What?
So, we had a great example of Aphrodite today. And we are seeing more about how even the parts of this very chapter fit together. This first opening paragraph relates very much to what we just read in section 4. The false conclusion that there is something unknowable and irrational about our existence. Proving or demonstrating Aphrodite to us. And isn't that cool? Isn't it fun? Isn't it inspiring to see how even the parts of the text fit together in a personally significant way? Aphrodite. What does that mean? If we keep reading and we keep reflecting in this kind of a way, we'll eventually be led to the dialectic, which we have seen might be the mastery of the dialectic, might be our destiny, our meaning of life. So, we're walking down a good path. Really neat to see, really cool, a lot of fun. I hope you had fun. I hope you had fun watching and reflecting. And as always, you can follow on YouTube and on Twitch. You can join the Discord, link below. And thank you so much for joining and the questions and chats. Thanks to the new chatters. And I hope you have something wonderful to reflect on in conversation, in words, with your friend or beloved, over coffee, and I hope you enjoy the presence of Aphrodite in that relationship yourselves. Until next time, thank you for joining me.